Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I have a package to open. This is an interesting one. So, to catch you up, I feel like I always have a story with GiantMouse, and I need to I need to stop that. So this is just going to be about this model, nothing else about GiantMouse. I actually really like GiantMouse knives at this point in time. I love the Ace Grand. I really like the Biblio. I love the Riv. They make great knives. Okay. I like them, and I like the people behind GiantMouse knives. I like Vox, I like Anso, and Jim, who's the guy who does all of the business, is awesome. Every time I talk to Jim, he's great. Anyway, you might remember, if you saw a few weeks ago, I got a GiantMouse Ace Sonoma, which is the skinny little knife built by Riat for GiantMouse. I got it on a trade deal from a buddy who offered it to me brand new in box. My friend, MB Wild, who I've traded with a number of times, is super trustworthy. And he had gotten the knife, had only flicked it a couple of times before trading it to me because I had something that he wanted. Sometimes that's the way it works, right? And he had already trained himself on GiantMouse Ace Sonomas in the past because he'd had a couple of them and kind of kept coming back to the model. That he had figured out it did best for him if he kept his fingers completely off the lock bar. So that's the way he was just trained already to hold the knife. I got it, and in that unboxing, I think I got it to deploy 2 or 3 times. It was like I couldn't figure out what was going on with the knife because it would not deploy for me. So then a few days later, because a ton of people had been asking me about it, I bumped up my first impressions, and I did a first impressions, and I talked about how I hadn't even carried the knife yet because each time that I'd come back to it and tried to deploy it, I just was super aggravated by how difficult the knife was to deploy. The only way I could get it to deploy is if I really completely made sure that there was not even a gram of pressure on the lock bar. If I was touching the lock bar at all, knife would not deploy. And so I had to figure out this weird hand placement that was really funky for me to go ahead and make sure I wasn't touching it at all so that I could get it to deploy, and it just felt uncomfortable and weird. I didn't really like it, if I'm being totally honest. And in my title of that video, I put GiantMouse Ace Sonoma First Impressions, something like that, and then I followed it with will it deploy? Because everybody was asking me after the first video, like, have you figured it out? Is something wrong with it? Is it like, was it just you having a bad day? Like, what was going on with it, right? So then something interesting happens. I'm going to unbox this in a second. You're going to see it, but you've seen the knife before. So then, a few days after that video had already been live, somebody put that in the GiantMouse Facebook group, the Shank Sharpeners Union. And I'm a part of that Facebook group, and I like their knives, and I like the people, and so, of course, I'm in there. And I hadn't seen the post yet. And then somebody sent me a message on Facebook, and they're like, hey, I don't know if you saw, but you're kind of getting dragged behind a truck in that Facebook group. So I go and I look at the post, and there were just a lot of like accusations that I was doing it for attention, or that I was trying to like cause some fake commotion and like make a problem out of nothing so that I could get views or something, which like, I mean, it's definitely not the way I try to operate. Okay. And so I ended up commenting back at a number of people, and some of you may be aware how Facebook can be. A lot of people tend to like, in a Facebook post, they'll like kind of dogpile, but then if you isolate them one-on-one and like comment back at them, then a lot of them are like, oh, sorry dude, no, I actually really like your videos, like, oh no, I didn't mean anything by it, I was just kidding, like whatever. And then 1 or 2 people were like, no, you shouldn't be talking about that, like blah blah blah. And so I ended up DMing with some people, going back and forth with them, and like, look, like I genuinely have a problem with this knife. And by that time I had already emailed Jim from GiantMouse and asked him how he wanted me to deal with it, because I was happy to send the knife in, or if they said that was just normal and that was the nature of the knife, then I would be done with it. I wanted nothing to do with that knife if that's the way the design was intended for the knife. Jim answered back, and he basically said, it is typically a little bit sensitive to lock bar pressure, so if you just make sure that you're handling it lightly instead of grasping down on the knife, then it should be fine. Let me know if that works or doesn't work. So then, to be totally fair and honest, I grabbed the knife again. After just having read his message, I grabbed the knife, I held it very lightly to see if it would deploy, and holding it in any kind of normal grip, where there would be, like, it's a skinny knife, here, let me just unbox it as I keep going. Putting my fingers on the knife in any kind of normal way for me meant that I was putting at least a tiny bit of pressure on the lock bar, and it wouldn't deploy that way. And so I said, Jim, it's not deploying. And so he said, great, send it in. I'll take a look at it. And so I did. And I sent it in to Jim, and Jim personally took a look at it and corresponded with me as he did, and had questions for me to double check that the knife hadn't been altered or modified or anything like that, and it hadn't. And I even specifically, when I was talking to him before sending it in, I was like, look, Jim, if you want me to take it apart and look at the internals and see what's going on, see if anything looks funky to me, I'd be happy to. But I also don't want to like have that on my hands if something goes wrong while I take it apart. Like, the knife is having an issue, I think. And so, I don't know. And they were very, very cool about it. Jim was great. He took a look at it, and he was like, yeah, this lock bar is definitely way more pressure sensitive than any other version of the knife he'd ever handled. And he was scratching his head about it. He wasn't sure. He may still be trying to figure out what's going on with that knife. I don't know. But the moral of the story is, he emailed me right back, and he was like, all right, I've got a replacement one going out in the mail for you right now, which is awesome of them. That they took it in, they saw it, they verified that something weird was going on with it, and they sent me a new one. So here I have a brand new one, which I sincerely appreciate. And it also feels nice to be validated that, I mean, I handle a lot of knives, right? Frame locks, liner locks, button locks, like axis locks, you name it. I've handled a ton of different knives, and I've had frame locks where the lock bar is pressure sensitive. It happens. And on certain knife models, it seems to just kind of be the nature of it to an extent. But I had never had one that would so completely seize up to the point where it just like wouldn't open if there was any pressure on it. And yeah, to me, it seemed like a flaw. That's the way I would describe it. So anyway, I think this is the same box that I sent in, which is cool. I'm assuming this is a new knife in it from what they explained. All right, so this one is another same exact spec PVD Sonoma. So it has the PVD scales and the bronze kind of pivot collar and clip, satin hardware. And let's see how it does. So I'm going to lightly place my hand on it. See, I'm lightly pressing on. Yeah, see, that's fine. See, when I opened the knife the first time, this is what I expected to happen. Oh, yeah. See, I'm holding this like a normal person. I'm even pressing on the lock bar now. Like, if I had put a tenth of this much pressure as this on the lock bar of the old one, it would not deploy. This is fine. This is deploying just fine. And I'm pressing on it now. I'm pressing pretty hard on the lock bar, in fact. Holding it in a normal grip. Okay, this is good. This is what the knife should be. And so I think this is good. I think this is also, frankly, just an opportunity to talk about how GiantMouse handled it really well. Like, things will happen at a certain point with any product. Like, if you're buying as many of anything as I buy of knives, there will probably be a point where there will be a lemon. Something will be wrong. Flaws happen. Mistakes occur. And some companies are really good at handling it. Others are not. What was surprising to me about this one is that these are one of the Riat built ones. And I have found that this is the first time I've ever had any serious issue with a Riat built knife. I don't know what was going on with that detent. I genuinely have no idea. I didn't take it apart to look for myself, but it was wrong. It wasn't correct. And the fact that Jim asked me questions about it and then gladly took the knife in, took a look at it himself, immediately verified something was going wrong, put a brand new one in the box for me, sent it right out to me, got it to me quickly. Like, that's the way that's best case, you know? Like, they took care of it. They got me one that is right, and what else could I possibly want? And he was communicative, and I appreciate that. So yeah, I appreciate GiantMouse for doing this, and I applaud them for handling it well. And yeah, I'm glad I just unboxed this one, and it's totally, like, literally, it could not be more night and day. The fact that I'm pressing with this finger to go ahead and pull on that, and it's opening. The other one would not do that. I couldn't hold it this way and have it deploy. I had to put my fingers all the way down here on the clip in an awkward way, and then in order to really get the leverage I needed, I was putting my thumb kind of all the way up here, and I could get the knife to open, but it was so awkward that I wasn't willing to carry it because I didn't want to pull out the primary knife in my pocket and have to think so hard about where I was going to put my hand to open it. This, I'll pull out and I'll deploy. Like, it's going to be that easy now. So now I'm going to carry it. Now I'm going to review it, and that's going to be much better at this point. So yeah, the knife is back. The knife is correct now. Thank you, Jim, and everybody at GiantMouse for handling it, taking care of it. I'm also pretty lucky in the sense that I've frankly had very few warranty type of like contacts with knife companies ever. I think this is only my second one. The first one was with Hogue, and I did something wrong in a disassembly, and they still helped me out, which was really cool of them. And yeah, this is, I think, only the second one. And so I'm pretty lucky in that way, all things considered. And yeah, this is correct now. This is right. This feels good, and I like it. I can now let myself be properly excited about this knife and start to experience it. So it's out of the box. Thanks for hearing my story time and bearing with me as I verbalized all of that. But I'm excited to share this one in the GiantMouse group and let people see that I'm not out to get GiantMouse. Not even a little. GiantMouse has been very good to me. They sent me my Biblio for free because they had just heard me talk about in a video that I had a less than positive experience the first time I bought a Biblio. They just sent me one just to prove that it had gotten better. Really cool of them. They sent me a Riv for free to review when the Riv came out. Very, very cool of them. Like, not only do I actually like them as people, but if you isolate like what's really going on, it would not be in my best interest if I was just a smart person to get one of their knives and fake that it had an issue. Like, it just wouldn't make any sense at all. So there's no publicity stunt or anything of the nature. The first one had an issue. Now it doesn't. They took care of it. And most people who I've talked to, theirs are like this. I think it was an isolated weird thing that one had the issue. I don't think this model is plagued with issues. Just going to say that as well. So anyway, I'll see you next time on the full review. I'll probably skip the first impressions because this is already my third video regarding this knife. I don't need to make it a series of 5, but yeah, I'll be doing my full review of this in at least a week, maybe 2, and you'll see it again then. So thanks everybody for checking it out, and we'll see you on the next one.